Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. The Bible tells one big story of redemption, and we want to spend 5 minutes every day journeying through the Bible from start to finish and exploring how all of it points to Jesus. Hey everyone, welcome back to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Aubrey Coleman, one of the hosts for the podcast, and today we're looking at Ezekiel chapter 4 through 6. So Ezekiel is among the captives in Babylon, but Jerusalem was still on their hearts. Many looked toward the city with an eye of faith, and some an eye of possessive pride, with assumptions that they would return to it. Therefore, God gave Ezekiel insight into what was to come for Jerusalem, a siege, being surrounded by the Chaldean army and the calamities that would follow. God gave him this information and instructed Ezekiel to draw it out on tablets and to make a representation of the siege for the people to see and to serve as a sign. It is the sins of both Israel and Judah that brings about this siege. Therefore, Ezekiel is instructed to lay on his side for 390 days, symbolically bearing the iniquity of the house of Israel, and then 40 days on the other side, bearing the iniquity of Judah. Each day he lied on his side represented a year of iniquity. Interestingly, the product of 390 and 40 is 430, and 430 years is a significant time span in Israel's history. This number is the length of years from God's covenant with Abram to the Exodus. All of this was to serve as a sign of the coming destruction of Jerusalem and the sins that brought its ruin. During this time, Ezekiel was given an intense meal plan of eating a small portion of mixed coarse grain bread at specific times, an amount to nearly enough to survive. It served as a representation for the famine and shortage of food and resources that would come from the siege of Jerusalem. Additionally, the bread was to be baked over extremities, making the food ceremonially unclean and symbolizing the nations God would banish them to for their sin. The judgment to come is continually declared through these few chapters. Ezekiel is told to shave his head and beard to signify God's rejection and abandonment of his people. Part of the shavings are to be burned in the middle of the city to note the many that will not make it through the famine. Another part is to be cut into pieces to signify those who would be slain by the sword. Another part is to be thrown into the wind to represent those who will scatter into other lands. The remaining shavings are to be kept in his clothing to represent those who are preserved. The various displays were to serve as a message that wherever sinners fled to apart from God for refuge, his wrath would consume them. The destruction and desolation to come for Jerusalem is a just act of God. His people were rebellious and idolatrous, and he destroyed what stood in the way of him and his people. But he did not do so without offering hope. A remnant of Israel would be spared, a remnant of people who would remember the Lord, hate their sin, and return to him. God's judgment was coming, and disaster would ensue on the nation of Israel. The Lord would justly bring desolation and destruction to reveal the idolatrous and evil hearts of the people, so that after all was said and done, they would come to acknowledge that he is the Lord. Sin should never be minimized or rationalized. It's heinous and destructive, and justly deserving of God's wrath. His wrath, as we witness in these chapters, is terrifying. But with God's perfect judgment on Israel comes perfect mercy. God spared a righteous remnant of Israel to save. Though we too are a sinful people, God continues to spare us from his wrath through the righteousness of his Son. Jesus Christ came to rescue and save us from God's wrath by taking on the wrath for himself and clothing us with his righteousness. What a merciful God, that he does not leave us to the destruction and demise of our sin, but rescues and saves us to be united with him. Thank you so much for joining us today, and be sure to follow along on our Instagram pages at Daily Grace Podcast and at The Daily Grace Co. And check out our website, www.thedailygraceco.com, for all kinds of resources to help you to dive deeper into God's Word. On the website, you can find our Story of Redemption study to accompany this podcast, as well as Story of Redemption journals that have dedicated journaling space for every single chapter of the Bible. If you enjoyed the episode today, we are excited for you to join us again tomorrow, and we'd love for you to take a moment to leave us a rating or review so that more people can find out about our show. Thank you so much, and we look forward to chatting again tomorrow.